Alright guys, so Infall dropped a trailer and it's for a main story update called Death and Rebirth. As you can see, it's going to involve Silas and Zayn, and apparently it's going to have 4 chapters, so I'm really interested to see where this story is going to go. And in fact, a few days ago I was actually saying to a friend of mine about how much I miss main story Silas. I really want to know what's going to happen with him, his dynamic with MC. Obviously we've had banners over the last few months and it is lovely to see all of the love interest progression with MC and their relationships, but I really miss the main story, so I'm really glad we're back to the main story and we get to find out what's actually going on. Now, I really hope we do learn more about MC in this one. I'm not sure we will, but I do have some thoughts. So I've watched this trailer a few times and I'm going to watch it with you guys now, and then I'm going to stop at certain points and just explain what I believe is going on or what we're seeing or any things that I find interesting about it. As always, please leave your comments below. I love reading them and I really want to know what you guys think, how you interpret the trailer, what you're most excited for. And yeah, so without further ado, let's get into this.
One man's hell.
Alright, so let's stop here for a second. I want to point out a particular frame I found incredibly interesting. So, it's this frame here. Now, I hope you guys have noticed why I find this frame really interesting. We have chess pieces in the background. Now, I believe each of these chess pieces relates to a love interest. Now, symbolically, this chessboard means everyone is making their strategic moves in the game now. And each of these, I think, is symbolic to a love interest, like I've just said. And I'm going to explain what each piece is and why I think it's tied to that particular love interest. Now, we've got the knight over here, which I think is tied to Xavier, his connection as a knight in the past. We've got Caleb here as the pawn. Caleb is Ever's pawn in the story right now, and also symbolically a pawn on a chessboard relates to being a soldier. So that aligns with Caleb. Over on this side, we've got the bishop, who I believe relates to Silas. Now, the bishop starts on either a light or dark tile on a chessboard, and I think that mirrors Silas perfectly. He started on the dark piece, he started that way, and bishops can only move on those pieces in a diagonal fashion. So if you imagine Silas is on the dark piece, MC is on the light piece as a bishop, they're going to go diagonally on those pieces and converge at some point. So I think symbolically that is Silas. Now over here, I believe we've got the king, and I think that relates to Raphael. Now, I don't have a huge amount of connection evidence for this being Raphael, other than the fact he is the only one, I believe, who has been a god in a past life. So that elevates him above everyone else naturally. And oh, by the way, I am aware that Zayn was a demigod, but he was a demigod. He wasn't an actual god. So Raphael was an actual god in a past life. So I believe that's why he is closely aligned with the king. And then in the middle here, we've got the rook or the castle, who I believe relates to Zayn. Now, the castle on a chessboard moves very straightforwardly, forwards or back. So it's very simple. Now here, it's in the middle. Now, Zayn being in the middle is very interesting. I have had thoughts about Zayn's presence in the main story for a while now. If you go back and watch the main story from beginning to end, or to where we are now, you will notice Zayn is always in the background. Now, that doesn't mean he's more important than any of the other love interests. I believe it means he's made his moves much earlier than any of the other love interests, which is why he's in the middle right now. And a lot of the story is centered around him. It's why he keeps coming up. So whatever lore is attached to him is very important at this point in the story. So remember, I'm not saying any of the other love interests aren't important. They absolutely are. But right now, Zayn is the one making most of the moves. So I think symbolically that's what we're seeing here. Obviously, I'd love to know your interpretations if you feel differently. I am more than happy to be wrong about this, or I'd love some more of your takes on what you feel these chess pieces actually represent and who they represent. but that was my interpretation of it. So I just find that incredibly fascinating. You're probably thinking, Maz, you're thinking far too much about this, and that's probably true, but Infold's writers, especially for Love and Deepspace, are fantastic, and they layer symbolism and meaning into small places like this in the background. So one of the most frequent things I see discussed is the books in Love and Deepspace in the background. So for example, the books that Zayn has, all of the titles, they mean something different. They relate to the scene in a particular way, or the book that's being referenced there has a story attached to it that's aligning closely with that love interest or that scene. So definitely go back and have a look yourself, guys, because a lot of the symbolism and meaning aren't just placed there for fun. That they are thinking very actively about how to present the story and where to lay a symbolism for people like me, I guess, to overanalyze them. So chessboard over here, I found that incredibly interesting. And yeah, so the next part is Zayn with a gun. Now, I don't think this is Zayn pointing the gun at us. We've seen this happen before. We've seen Caleb point the gun at the camera, but he was pointing it towards an enemy. So I think this is just a cinematic choice. It's a cinematic choice, and also it's the meme of Zayn holding the gun, and we all know it. So it's come to life, guys. What can I say other than, yeah, well done, Infold, for making this come to life.
One man's hell is another man's paradise.
You destroyed it?
The experiment didn't lead to...
Okay, so before we move on, let's talk about the scene with Silas and MC we get here. Now, something I want to point out is this part here. Now, what's really, really interesting is in Beyond Cloudfall, after they meet each other, they are still very untrusting towards each other, and then there is a kindled scene. And in that kindled scene, MC tries to attack Silas, and she tries to strangle him at one point. Now here, if you think about it, they've just met again in the main story. Yes, MC doesn't have the memories, but Silas does. So it's framed slightly differently, but very similar. She goes for the neck again. Now, this isn't a strangle, obviously, but I think it's very reminiscent of how they first met, they didn't trust each other, and once again, MC really doesn't trust him. She's got her arm on his neck. Now, let's think about the neck for a second. This is probably a very vulnerable space for Silas. He can defend everything else, but the moment it comes to his neck, it's a very vulnerable spot. It could actually be a source of weakness for him. So the fact that he's letting MC place her arm there willingly means he knows she's not going to do anything, or the fact that now, you know, in Beyond Cloudfall, he wasn't in love with her at that point, but now he is very much in love with her. So her putting her arm on his neck, he will let her do it. I don't know. There's just symbolism behind this, and I can't explain it, guys. I think you just need to play Beyond Cloudfall and then watch this scene and make those connections, because I think a lot of what's going on here has a lot to do with mirroring their past. So with Silas and MC, we know that a lot of what's going on with them is Silas hoping that MC will remember what they had and what they once shared. So a lot of things that happen are very reminiscent of Beyond Cloudfall. So it's definitely worth looking at that, but I found this incredibly interesting. And of course, the tension between them is always heightened. And yeah, they are two very attractive people. What can I say? Anyway, let's continue.
The experiment didn't lead to new life. It turned people into wanderers, minions of a protocol.
All right, let's talk about Zayn. Now, MC is restrained, and Zayn is injecting her with something. Now, I think there's several parallels here which I find super interesting. In Zayn's Catch-22 card, it was Zayn being injected with the frenzy enhancer. Now here, MC is restrained, and she is being injected with something. Now, I'm listening to what Zayn is saying here as well, and he's talking about the failed experiments where people ended up turning into wanderers, and this is deeply entrenched in Zayn's story. Now, as a reminder, let me just get Zayn on the screen here. Now, as a reminder, Zayn went to Mount Eternal when he was younger, and there humans ended up turning into wanderers, and one of his friends, William, ended up slowly becoming one before Zayn had to mercy kill him. So this is very much part of Zayn's story, and now he's seemingly telling MC about it, so he's finally revealing his cards and what he knows. And also, the fact that he's in his Dawnbreaker gear telling us this also relates to Dawnbreaker's anecdote. So, Dawnbreaker's anecdote is about Dawnbreaker killing humans before they turn into wanderers. So, it's very angsty, it's very dark. If you haven't read it yet, please do. It is an incredible anecdote and it's incredibly sad. And I think all of this now coming into the main story is fantastic because now we're getting a lot of Dawnbreaker lore and a lot of that coming into it. There's a lot of symbolism here and a lot to grapple with, but basically what we've got here is all of this finally converging into the main story. So this is why Zayn is in the center of the chessboard right now. All of Zayn's history is now coming to the front. MC is finding out a lot of things here, and it's got a huge impact on the story. So we've got people turning into wanderers, Zayn knowing about it, Zayn telling MC. We've got the other love interests are connected to that in some way as well. I won't go into detail there. Obviously, their branches are going to come out later and we'll talk about it then. But yeah, so this is what we've got so far with Zayn. So I think there's a lot of symbolism here, a lot of interesting imagery. Again, the Catch-22 parallel I find super interesting. But also, I just want to point something out. If you're nervous about the fact that Zayn has MC restrained and he's injecting her with something, I just want to point out this part here. He's soothing her, he's caressing her. This isn't an act of, this isn't a horrible act that Zayn is doing right now. It's a necessary act. So he's soothing her here and he's trying to calm her down. So my take on this is MC possibly got infected or something happened and Zayn has a kind of cure for her. So it's either that, and that's why she had to be restrained, otherwise she would turn into a wanderer, or I don't know, there's possibly something else going on. But that would be my feeling based on what he's talking about when he's talking about people turning into wanderers. And then we've got MC restrained on a chair and he's injecting her with something. So he might have a cure of some kind, but I'm not 100% sure there. So obviously leave your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts on this one. And obviously I'm going to go back and reread things because I think there's a lot more to it than that. And I'm possibly on the wrong track here. I don't know, but yeah, leave your comments because I'm really interested in this one. But anyway, let's move on because I'm getting way too into this.
Wanderers, minions of a protocol.
You got what you wanted. There's no turning back now. Some eager to die. Don't push yourself. The smallest vulnerability could cost you everything.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I got really into that. That was a great scene. Now, a couple of things to point out here. These people right here. These people right here, they look very professional. I think they're possibly related to Ever and not just Silas's typical enemies. So I don't know what's going on here, but I'm really interested to see what's going on. And also, we've got MC and Silas with the same tension again. And I'm sure everyone has noticed this by now.
No turning back.
That scene where she puts her knee on his shoulder. Yeah, building up that tension for us. Definitely building up that tension for us. Now, something Silas says here is very, very interesting. So let's find it. Don't push yourself. Even the smallest vulnerability could cost you everything. And that's Silas in a nutshell. That's his philosophy, at least at this point. Throughout the banners, we've seen his philosophy slowly start to dwindle a little when it comes to this, especially in his birthday memory, Where Hearts Live. However, right now in the main story, this is Silas's philosophy, and this is what he operates on. So it's super interesting, it's very telling, and it's just reminding us that this is where Silas is at this point in the main story.
The smallest vulnerability could cost you everything.
It was a Pandora's box that should have remained sealed.
All right. I don't have a lot to say about this other than this is so husband and wife coded, it's ridiculous. Now, I find it really, really interesting about how close MC and Zayn are here, especially when they're resonating together. Now, I think I just think this is interesting because he doesn't have to resonate this close with her, but they do. So if this is the main story, this is quite a close gesture to me. So I'm really curious to see how they'll play this out in the main story, given that there are, 4 other love interests to consider. So yeah, I don't think this is a branch. This is the main story. So we'll see how that works. But this is very husband and wife coded. I have no other thoughts other than, wow, husband, wife, you get that. Also, Zayn's comment, it was a Pandora's box that should have remained sealed. It goes back again, I think, to what happened at Mount Eternal and whatever experiments have been going on that should not have happened, because it obviously caused all of this chaos to unfold. And now Zayn is trying to right whatever wrongs have happened. So that's what we've got here, I believe. But yeah, nothing else to say other than husband and wife.
Should have remained sealed.
What are the odds?
Review, guaranteed victory. Hold on.
Fire.
Okay, one thing I've got to say is I love the fact that she is struggling to actually compose the gun here, and Zayn grabs her hand to steady her. That's just Zayn in a nutshell. That's his and MC's relationship. I love that. That's fantastic. I just wanted to say that. Now, let's get into the next part, and this is where I think there's some more symbolism to unpack. Okay. So these sections here, let's just have a look at them. So we've got Silas, Shadow Past, and we've got Zayn, Fates Entwined. Now, I really want to hone in on Zayn's here. Now, I don't know if you guys will remember, in Xavier's story, in the main story with Xavier, there is a moment where he is comforting a wanderer. And he's in this exact pose. Now, this looks like a very young Zayn. This is not an adult Zayn. So we've got Zayn here holding his hand out, and we've got what looks like an arm or a claw coming out. Now, I just can't shake the imagery of Xavier comforting that wanderer and this being so similar. Now, if we go back to what I said about MC being a wanderer or potentially being infected, I wonder if this is something to do with their past. I'm not 100% sure. But in the next part, we get this. Now, for those of you who are aware of Zayn's lore and backstory, you will know exactly what this is referencing. And for those of you that aren't, let me explain. So, when they were younger, I think about 8 years old, Zayn lost control of his evil and he really hurt MC. And it was bad. It was bad to the point that Zayn disappeared for a while and then returned. So, what we've got here is MC on a stretcher, we've got Zayn watching her. Now, if we want to connect these two, it is possible that this is possibly symbolism about Zayn possibly losing control of his evil. He was maybe trying to do something here that he could not achieve. Either way, he lost control, and as a result, MC got very badly hurt. Now let's just go back here for a second. So there's a theory that is going round currently that Zayn might have killed MC. Now, I need to look into this one. I'll be honest, I haven't had time. But if it's the case that he accidentally killed her, she would have no memories of being around that age with Zayn. So she definitely has memories of Zayn. I just can't remember if she has memories from being that young with Zayn. So if you guys remember, let me know in the comments and I will do some digging myself because I'm really interested with this one. Now, just to go into analytical mode here, this flower arch is so interesting to me because it doesn't have to be there, but it is. So this possibly relates to a passage of some kind. And if we want to talk about the passage of time or even a passage into death, then that makes sense that possibly she turned into a wanderer and something happened. I don't know. But either way, there's a lot going on here, and I think there's a lot to unpack. So just some initial observations. I'm not 100% sure about them, obviously, but if you guys have any ideas or any comments, let me know. I would love to read them. And yeah, I'm just so intrigued by this imagery. I think it's really interesting. Now, I think Silas is pretty self-explanatory, but as a reminder, this relates to Beyond Cloudfall. It is always coming back to that myth for Silas. He really needs MC to remember. So it's possible MC's memory is going to start coming back to her slowly in the main story. So that'll be interesting to watch. And over here, we've got the N109 zone falling apart. So we've got this tower. I mean, it's say falling apart, but it's kind of rising up into the sky. So that's really interesting. And I'm really curious to see what all of this symbolism means in the story, but I can't figure it out right now. So finally, let's go on to the last part of the video, which is arguably the most exciting. Outfits, guys, leather outfits! So yeah, not much to say about that other than finally Zayn in leather. That is all I'm gonna say. Zayn in a leather outfit, like a leather jacket. And one of my friends actually pointed out the necklace here probably has MC's name on it. So I'm gonna headcanon that this necklace has MC's name on it. But yeah, Zayn in a leather jacket is incredible. He looks fantastic. That is an incredible look. And Silas looks good no matter what he does as well. I mean, this just works on him. And I love how cozy this turtleneck looks. It's a very cute turtleneck jumper. I like it. But he looks good. As always, would we expect anything less from him? Anyway, so yeah, those were my first initial thoughts. Thank you for sticking with me, guys. I know there was a lot to this and a lot to unpack, but as I've said, please leave your comments below. I really want to know what you guys think. And I'm so excited to share my actual thoughts with you when I actually play this update and what it means for the lore, what it means for Zayn and Silas, and yeah, just learning more about the story. So thank you guys once again and stay frosty.